The emperor frowned. No matter what the reason is, we only need to do our part well. No matter what, we must welcome them well to get some benefits for Chongqing Kingdom. He felt that the purpose of Feng Ruqing coming here was not as simple as this. Besides, there were no rumors about Feng Ruqing's real purpose. It was better to stay silent than making a wild guess. Therefore, the emperor ignored the empress' guess. However, the empress believed that Feng Ruqing came for this reason. She had traveled all over the mainland and brought back a lot of young girls as disciples. So, her visit to Chongqing Kingdom must also be because of this. Lu Qingqing was the most outstanding girl in the entire Chongqing Kingdom. But, making such an excellent girl Murongqing's concubine was still a pity. The empress' eyes darkened. Fortunately, Lu Qingqing was her people. Perhaps she could also use Lu Qingqing to destroy Murongqing. It was just a pity that a good girl like her would have to be widowed in the future. Now, if she could become Feng Ruqing's disciple, even if she was a widow, there must be countless people pursuing her. However, she must first use Lu Qingqing to deal with Murongqing before Feng Ruqing took her away. If Lu Qingqing left with Feng Ruqing, the empress would lose a chance to kill Murongqing. The empress took a deep breath and smiled. Emperor, no matter what, Lu Qingqing is indeed very suitable for Qingya. Seeing the empress with such an expression, the emperor's smile also grew a little more sincere. The empress wants the best for Qingya. She looks so worried about his happiness. Even if the emperor did not love her, he would not let anyone bully the empress. After all, she was not only Qingya's aunt but also the only sister of his beloved woman. Prince Manor was quiet compared to the noise outside. Nan Qiu lay against the Wolf King's back, sitting on the ground and facing the sun. Her smile was as bright as the sunlight and could instantly illuminate people's hearts. The Wolf King looked at her with a gentle look in his eyes, and there was a light in his eyes that he had never had before. It seemed as if there would always only be Nan Qiu alone in his eyes. Me for extra chapters. A sharp cry echoed through the sky, breaking the calmness of the moment. Nan Qiu frowned and turned to look in the direction from where the commotion came from. She then saw Ah Bao lying in the sun, and in front of it stood two girls. One girl was dressed luxuriously, while the other servant was full of anger, looking at Ah Bao fiercely. Ah Bao raised its eyes blankly, obviously not knowing what was happening. It was sleeping comfortably when it was woken up by a scream, followed by the sight of a servant glaring at it. "Where did this come from?" the servant growled. "Don't you know that my young lady is allergic to all spirit beasts with fur? Guard, take this cat and throw it out now." The smile on Nan Kaya's face disappeared at the sound of this voice. She pursed her lips and stood up. She looked somewhat angry. Ah Bao's face was full of bewilderment. It looked at the two people in front of it blankly. With the capacity of its brain, it really did not understand why it could not sleep there. Where did these two crazy women come from? They are disturbing my sleep. However, the servant was still a bit furious. I don't know where this cat came from. I never knew the prince has a cat in his manor. Lu Qingqing pulled the servant aside. She looked at Ah Bao lying on the ground, pursed her lips, and said, "Forget it. This is Prince's manor, and this cat might be the prince's cat. Young lady, Empress sent me to take care of you. She is afraid that you will be bullied here." The servant stomped her foot. "Moreover, you are the prince's future concubine. Is that cat more important than you? A spirit beast can never be compared to a human being. Young lady is allergic to cat fur, so the cat had no right to be in this place." Lu Qingqing wanted to say something but then thought also of the fact that she was indeed allergic to cat fur, and if this cat did not leave, it would be inconvenient for her to be here in the future, so she did not say more. The servant saw that Lu Qingqing still did not speak. She waved her hand and said, "Guard, throw this cat out." She was the one sent by the Empress to take care of the young lady, so the people in Prince Manor should also listen to her orders. After all, the Empress' status was second highest after the Emperor. The servant raised her chin proudly. Just as the two guards came to grab Ah Bao suddenly leaped and scratched the guard's arm. Blood flowed, scaring Lu Qingqing, making her face paler. Seeing this fearful look on her face, the servant became even angrier. "Useless. You can't even handle a cat." Hurry up and catch it. She stomped her foot in anger. Then, just as those guards wanted to catch the cat, a figure suddenly rushed forward and took Ah Bao into her arms. Lu Qingqing froze for a moment when she saw this girl, pursing her lips with a look of disappointment in her eyes. No wonder the prince is fascinated by this woman. She's so beautiful. Ah Bao, are you all right? Nan Qiu lowered her gaze and looked at Ah Bao in her arms. A beautiful wolf with long silver fur stood next to Nan Qiu. His gaze was cold, filled with incredible power. Lu Qingqing's face turned pale when she saw the Wolf King. She took a few steps back again, biting her lip tightly as if she was a bit uncomfortable. Me for extra chapters. You are the girl who has seduced the fourth prince? The servant looked at Nan Qiu. Is this your cat? Nan Qiu replied expressionlessly. The servant looked angry. Don't you know that my young lady is allergic to animal fur? If you want to stay in the prince manor, you must throw this cat away. The cat is not allowed to be here. Nan Qiu sneered. Why? Because people are more important than cats. The servant raised her head arrogantly. Some people thought a stranger was more important than a pet that had been with its owner for a long time. They thought they were the master of all things, and no other creature could compare to them. These people could not tolerate anyone who considered a spirit beast more important than them, even if it had been with someone for a long time. However, these people did not realize that they were only a bunch of strangers. Due to this pride, the servant felt the cat was not allowed to be here because her young lady was allergic to cat fur. Even if her young lady was not yet the prince's concubine, no one should keep cats here. The moment the servant said that, the Wolf King moved as fast as lightning before it was standing in front of the servant. Before the servant could react, the Wolf King had already forcefully stepped on her face. The Wolf King's gaze was cold as it looked down at the servant in front of it. The coldness in those eyes was even more gut-wrenching to look at. You, get out if you still want to live. The Wolf King's eyes were cold, and there was a chill in its voice. Those words were like a heavy stick that smashed into the servant's heart. The servant's eyes widened in shock, looking at this overbearing Wolf King with disbelief. She trembled and her face turned pale. It can speak? This wolf can speak? She bit her lip hard, and her eyes were filled with fear as if she had never thought that this wolf could actually speak. Ah Bao licked its paws and turned to Nan Qiu pitifully. She bullied me. The panicked servant almost fainted after hearing that. Not only could the wolf talk, but this cat could talk like a human as well. Lu Qingqing's face was pale. She pursed her lips and slowly walked toward Nan Qiu with a guilty look on her face. Sorry, Maiden Xia Xia. My servant is quite straightforward. I'm sorry if she has offended you. Please don't be bothered by her. Her voice was gentle, and her face was sincere. It was hard for people not to accept her apology. Nan Qiu hummed. Straightforward? Straightforward girls are cute, such as Aunt Gu and Aunt Tang. Although father does not like them, they are straightforward and cute when they scold my father. But this servant, she's arrogant and brainless. She thinks that the whole world should give way to you. Nan Qiu had never seen such a person before. When she was in Luyun Kingdom, no one dared to disrespect Ah Bao like that. Me for extra chapters. The people of Luyun Kingdom liked it very much, but others thought they were superior to the spirit beasts, not knowing that the spirit beasts were more honored than them in others' eyes. Lu Qingqing's face was pale, and she was so thin that it made her look like a weak girl. It was as if a gust of wind could blow her away. Maiden Xia Xia, how can you forgive her? It is even more virtuous to repay grievances with virtue, isn't it? She bit her lip and looked at Nan Qiu sincerely. Nan Qiu sneered. Those who repay grievances with virtue are all foul. I only know that those who have bullied Ah Bao should pay for it. Repaying grievances with virtue? Ridiculous. Her mother taught her that she could not bully people since she was a little girl and never let them bully her. You are a coward and useless if you're bullied and don't fight back. Then you deserve to be bullied. Ah Ming, she just insulted Ah Bao. Beat her. Teach her a lesson so she won't be arrogant again. Nan Qiu sat down. She rested her hand on her cheek and smiled coldly, glancing at Lu Qingqing, whose face was pale. Nan Qiu ignored her. Lu Qingqing bit her lip and almost fainted. She turned to look at the servant who had fallen to the ground and immediately closed her eyes, trembling. Why are there people in this world who are not willing to repay grievances with virtue? However, looking at the servant who had fallen to the ground, Lu Qingqing pursed her lips and did not dare to say anything. At this moment, a familiar voice came from the side, and when she turned, she saw a handsome young man walking toward them. What's happening? The young man was handsome, but his face was a little pale. His fine hair fluttered in the wind stunningly, making Lu Qingqing's heart beat faster. Looking at Murongqing, who was walking slowly, Lu Qingqing raised her head and looked a little coy. "Fourth Prince, you're here?" Murongqing glanced at Lu Qingqing and frowned. "Why are you here?" He was cold and distant, which made Lu Qingqing a bit disappointed. She looked up and coincidentally saw Murongqing turn around and walk toward Nanqiyu. In his eyes, there was a gentleness that she had never seen before. At that moment, Lu Qingqing's face was pale, and she looked sad. She stared blankly at Murongqing, who had walked next to Nanqiyu. Her heart sank. She clenched her hands tightly, and her breathing grew heavy. "Maiden Xia Xia," Murongqing looked at Nanqiyu, who was munching on the fruit smilingly. His eyes were more gentle. "Are you all right?" Nanqiyu raised her head to look at Murongqing. "Me? It's her who's in trouble." She pointed at Lu Qingqing, smirking. "She wants to throw my bao." Murongqing's face instantly sank. He knew how important this cat was to Nanqiyu. He also knew that Lu Qingqing was allergic to cat fur. "Young Lady Lu." His tone to Lu Qingqing was still polite, but his face expressionless. "This is not your Lu manor. It is my residence. Maiden Xia Xia's cat can stay wherever she wants it to stay. What right do you have to remove it from the premise?" Lu Qingqing's face was pale. She raised her head to look at Murongqing, tears welling up in her eyes. "Me for extra chapters." Murongqing never knew that she already fell in deep love with him the first time she met him a few years ago. Back then, he was still young, but he rarely went out because of his sickness. She only saw him from afar. His eyes were as clear as spring water. So, when the Empress came to tell her that they wanted her to become his wife, she was so glad and happy. However, she did not expect to be treated coldly after she came here. The Wolf King withdrew its hand after seeing Murongqing come back and walked to Nanqiyu. Nanqiyu took out a spirit fruit, wiped it with a handkerchief, and then handed it to the Wolf King. The Wolf King's eyes were gentle, and its heart was even leaping for joy. This was a feeling it had never had for so many years, and it was only in front of Nanqiyu that it would be like this. It seemed that her every move and every smile could affect its life. The servant spurted a mouthful of blood and got up from the ground slowly. She wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, walked to Murongqing's side, and knelt. "Your Highness, this was all my fault. It tried to remove the cat. It has nothing to do with my young lady. Please don't blame young Lady Lu. Just punish me alone." She kowtowed with eyes filled with tears. Looking at the servant in such a state, Lu Qingqing bit her lip and said, "Stop it. It's my fault too because I did not discipline you well. I deserve to bear the blame." It was indeed the servant's fault. Lu Qingqing only failed to control her actions. When Murongqing looked at Lu Qingqing's appearance, he did not say much. His face sank as he expressionlessly said, "Lu Qingqing, don't come to my manor in the future." Lu Qingqing's heart skipped a beat. She looked up with eyes filled with tears and turned to Murongqing. "But it's the Empress. This is Fourth Prince Manor, so I've right to decide everything here. Don't blame me for being harsh if you come and cause trouble again." Murongqing shrugged off his robes and turned to Nanqiyu. His gaze softened. "Maiden Xia Xia, don't worry. No one can bully you." Nanqiyu almost choked on the fruit in her hand. She looked up at Murongqing blankly. "When did anyone bully me? The one who has been bullied was Bao. I only want them to stop abusing the spirit beasts. But it seems like Lu Qingqing will become his concubine and will stay here later. Then should Bao and I leave as well?" Thinking of this, Nanqiyu turned to Murongqing. "When will you start your treatment?" Murongqing was slightly stunned and asked, "Why are you asking about it?" Oh, you've helped in the savage land. So, to repay your kindness, I will stay and wait until you recover from your illness. If you can't get well, at least I can help you find someone to treat you. She only wanted to say that she would leave after he had recovered. Murongqing's face turned pale. He wanted to approach Nanqiyu, but the Wolf King came across and blocked his way. Somehow, Murongqing always felt that this wolf did not like him. Thinking about this, Murongqing could not help but shake his head and smiled bitterly. It's just a spirit beast. I must be overthinking. Maiden Xia Xia, I will tell you once I've recovered from my illness. The state preceptor said we have to wait for Flower King's fruit to treat me. However, he would not be able to get well for the rest of his life. He wanted her to stay. Oh, Nanqiyu felt a little lost. Me for extra chapters. Her mother had taught her long ago that one must keep one's word, and if she left now, she would be breaking her promise. Therefore, she could only wait. Otherwise, when the Empress appeared the other day, she would have left. She did not feel comfortable here. I'm tired. Let's go rest in the room. All right, the Wolf King's voice was surprisingly lovely. It only had Nanqiyu in its eyes, and it did not even spare others a glance. Lu Qingqing looked at Murongqing, whose eyes were fixed upon Nanqiyu. There was a gentle light in the young man's eyes that she had never seen before. Such affection was so evident that it made her heart ached a little. Lu Qingqing took a deep breath, suppressing the pain in her heart. She pursed her lips and walked to Murongqing. Fourth Prince, why aren't you leaving yet? Murongqing glanced at her impatiently. Don't think that with your aunt backing you up, you can simply become my concubine. No one can enter my manor without my permission. Lu Qingqing's face grew even paler, and her body trembled a little. Her pitiful face could make others' hearts ache. She looked at Murongqing with eyes filled with disappointment and pain. Murongqing finally said to her coldly, Lu Qingqing, I don't like you. You'll not be happy if you marry me. You better leave now, and I will pretend that you never came. Lu Qingqing bit her lip hard. She looked at Murongqing and turned away slowly, tears weeping down, soaking her face. Murongqing did not say anything. With one hand on his back, he watched Lu Qingqing's departure coldly. Until after Lu Qingqing disappeared, he turned to the direction in which Nanqiyu had just left. The courtyard instantly quieted down. Only the sound of the light wind brushed could be heard. Little princess. Inside the room, Bao raised its tiny head pitifully. When will we leave this place? Mother should have received my letter, and if I can go back, she will come to pick me up. Oh, Bao wanted to jump into Nankai's arms for comfort. However, before it could rush over, the Wolf King had grabbed it and threw it out. Bao flew out of the window and disappeared into the dusk. Ming? Nanqiyu looked at the Wolf King, somewhat confused. What are you doing here? Sleep. The Wolf King crouched on the ground, and it slowly closed its eyes. Even its sleeping posture was so elegant. Nanqiyu was indeed a bit tired. She lazily stretched her waist and rubbed her eyes. I'm sleepy. I want to rest for a while. Call me when Bao is back. With Bao's strength, it would not take a long time to return. The time was almost dusk. The Wolf King opened his eyes. His pure blue eyes were so beautiful as if, with just a glance, they could draw people in. A faint light enveloped the Wolf King's body, and within a few moments, his figure gradually turned into a handsome young man standing in the room. He walked toward the girl on the bed and brushed her brow gently. A smile grew on his face. The young man lowered his eyes and moved closer to Nanqiyu. He then stretched out his tongue to lick her eyebrows gently. Me for extra chapters. She smells really good. However, this time, just as the young man's hand was about to touch her cheek, a hand suddenly grabbed his wrist tightly. The young man lowered his gaze and met with a pair of beautiful eyes. Who are you? These days, she often had a dream, and in that dream, there would be a charming young man. However, now, the young man in that dream appeared in front of her eyes. She looked at him coldly. Who the hell are you? Where is Ming? Did you eat it? The young man was stunned. He smiled. This smile was so beautiful that it could take one's breath away. The young man lowered his gaze and moved closer to Nanqiyu. His little hot breath puffed on her ear. Take a guess. Nan Chiu pursed her lips. These days, you have been sneaking in, right? So I'm not dreaming? How did you enter the prince's manor? Are you the prince's man? She paused and shook her head again. No, you're not. Murong Qing doesn't have a good-looking and strong man like you around. If the young man was only an ordinary person, she should have found out the first day he appeared. However, these days she always thought she was dreaming. If she did not wake up just now, she would not have thought that there was a real person who was flirting with her while she was asleep. The young man gently caressed Nankai's snowy skin and smiled stunningly. Nan Chiu was dumbfounded. This young man is so beautiful, xia xia. His voice was hoarse but gentle enough to make Nankai's heart skip a beat. You, her eyes widened in surprise, looking incredulously at the young man in front of her. She froze. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Nankai's face changed dramatically. She raised her hand, wanting to punch the young man's face. Her tiny fist was as fast as the wind, but the young man still managed to grab it quickly. Xia xia. His voice was as gentle as usual, her breathing grew heavy. Where is Ah Ming? Where did you hide my Ah Ming? Give me back my Ah Ming. She looked up with her eyes filled with tears. She knew about the spirit beasts that could transform into humans. Her grandmother's white phoenix had turned into a human and followed her grandmother every day. But she could not believe a wolf that she kept as a pet would one day transform into a beautiful young man and appear in front of her. She felt disappointed because he had kept this matter from her for such a long time, and she had dumbly thought that this was a dream. Xia xia. The teenager raised his hand and pulled the little girl into his arms. Xia xia's eyes reddened, and tears almost fell. Until now, she was still a bit in disbelief. How did her pet turn into a human? She could accept Ah Bao turning into a human because Ah Bao was a girl. But why Ah Ming? Xia xia, don't you like me like this? The young man lowered his gaze and looked at the little girl in his arms sadly. Me for extra chapters. His sadness was so obvious that somehow, like a sword, it deeply stabbed Nankai's heart. She pursed her lips, pushed the young man away with one hand, and took a few steps back. You've been lying to me? Her body was trembling with anger. She had raised Ah Ming as a pet, and she even bathed and undressed in front of it. However, now she suddenly realized that she had, unknowingly, been seen naked by Ah Ming. This was hard for her to accept. The young man froze, looking down at the empty embrace. He slowly raised his eyes, staring at the little girl in front of him. His blue eyes were filled with disappointment. It seems that she still does not remember me. All these years, he was the only one who did not forget that warm memory. She did not remember anything. Xia xia, I didn't mean to hide it from you. I was afraid you would leave me again, 10 years. He had been waiting for a time when he could appear in front of her. Yet she had forgotten everything. Liar. Nankai's tears poured like rain as she pointed at the young man angrily. You lie to me. Don't think I can forgive you just because you are beautiful. I will tell my mother and make her chop you into pieces or make you half paralyzed forever. The young man was shocked when he heard her say that. However, his heart ached when he looked at Nankai's tears pouring down her face. He pulled Nanchiu into his arms, ignoring her resistance. He then gently kissed away the tears from the corners of her eyes. Nanchiu got angry and slapped the young man's face. The young man did not dodge her fierce slap. He licked the corner of his mouth and looked at the little girl in his arms. Are you still angry? Nanchiu froze. He could easily dodge the slap with his strength, but he did not do so, and it confused her somewhat. If you are still angry, you can punch me a few times. The young man took Nankai's hand, and his gaze was sincere as he stared at her. Nanchiu pursed her lips and did not make a move. I thought this guy would dodge, but who knows, he didn't even move a bit. He deliberately did that. Why do you keep lying to me? Nanchiu looked up. Her face remained cold, but her anger had dissipated a lot. The young man smiled. I thought you liked me that way. Just like 10 years ago, Nanchiu was slightly stunned. She hummed and turned around, not even willing to look at the young man again. Go away. The young man's smile suddenly faded after hearing these words. His body stiffened, and he stared at her sadly. Hates me? She doesn't want to see me again? When Nanqiu turned, she saw the young man's sad face, and her heart was suddenly a little uncomfortable. You are now a man, Nanqiu pursed her lips. Mother said a man and a woman cannot be in the same room. We have been together for such a long time, and I've seen. Nanqiu kicked him hard before he could finish his words. How dare this bastard mention it? I can't believe that you're still bringing this up, me for extra chapters. Nanqiu almost exploded with anger as she thought of those days when the wolf followed her to the bath. She glared at him fiercely. If you say one more word, I'll kill you. Seeing that this little girl was indeed angry, the young man raised his hand and caressed her long hair smilingly. He was already beautiful when he was not smiling. However, with this smile, it made him more stunning, and everyone might fall for him. Nanqiu fell silent, staring at the young man in front of her. He's a demon. This bastard is a scourge. He had such a handsome face that it could make women kill each other just to be with him. However, he did not know how to restrain himself, knowing that he smiled so stunning, but still insisted on smiling at her. Fortunately, she had seen many beautiful men, such as her father and her uncle Jioming. However, if other women saw it, they might have fainted in front of him. Once she thought of this, she could not help but harumphed, Vixen? I am a wolf. The young man frowned. I'm not a vixen, but you like to charm others even more than vixens? Nanqiu tilted her head to look at the young man in front of her. I need to bathe and change. Go out now. The young man laughed. You never avoided me before. Why don't you just treat me as a wolf? Nanqiu's face darkened. Can this be the same? Or, how about I turn into a wolf again? The young man asked gently, but it made Nanqiu's face grow colder. You can't follow me anymore if you don't go out now. The young man frowned. A fierce red light flashed in his eyes as his gaze was fixed upon the young girl in front of him. The wolf was fierce. However, in front of her, he preferred to suppress all his fierceness. His eyes were gentle, and a light smile played upon his lips. Then I'll wait for you outside. His voice was soft. Nanqiu pursed her lips and did not say anything. She quietly sighed in relief after the young man left the room. The young man stood at the door, without words, like her guardian. From a distance, Murongqing saw the young man standing outside of Nanqiu's room. He froze for a moment, and his face sank. He then sternly shouted, Who are you? Why did you barge into my manor without my permission? The young man glanced at Murongqing coldly and expressionlessly, as if he did not care. A cold light flashed in Murongqing's eyes. Who the hell are you? What do you want to do to Maiden Xiaxia? Every time Murongqing said one more word, the young man's face sank more. Did he have bad intentions toward Xiaxia? Although this might be true, get lost, the young man said coldly as if it was a waste of time to talk to Murongqing. Murongqing waved his hand expressionlessly. Guard, catch him now. Instantly, countless guards came from behind him and surrounded the young man, trapping him in the middle. The young man glanced at those people before him. The corners of his lips gradually lifted into a cold smile. His smile flooded with frigidness, which sent a chill down people's spine. However, at that moment, the door of the room slowly opened. Nanqiu appeared at the door with a fretful expression. Her tiny face became tightly tensed. What are you doing outside? Murongqing's face eased up when he saw Nanqiu. He turned to look at her and said, Xiaxia, oh, this is Ming. Ming? The moment he heard that name, Murongqing's expression stiffened. His eyes turned to the young man, surprised. Is Ming? Me for extra chapters. That wolf? Now, he finally understood why that wolf always looked at him with resentment in its eyes. It must be that he had ill intentions toward Maiden Xiaxia. Nan Ming, Murongqing looked up at the young man and smiled disdainfully. I don't care about your intentions and I won't give in. Besides, you are just a wolf. Maiden Xiaxia will not like a wolf. The young man looked at Murongqing coldly. Xiaxia's surname is Nan. Murongqing was stunned. My surname is also Nan. The young man remained calm, but a cold light in his eyes made people shiver. So, do you think him up to something? Murong-Qing was dumbfounded. This guy got the surname because Maiden Xia Xia thought that he was a wolf. You? Murong-Qing? Nanqiu smiled and looked at Murong-Qing. Do you hate Ming? If you don't like him, well, leave your manor tonight. Murong-Qing panicked. He quickly held back all his anger and smiled gently. The smile was a little fake. Maiden Xia Xia, don't misunderstand me. I just saw a strange man at your door and was afraid that he might do something untoward to you. Oh, Nanqiu sighed in relief and smiled. I thought you didn't like Ming. All right, we're going to rest. Ming, come in with me. The young man glanced at Murong-Qing's dissatisfied face, slowly turned around, and followed Nanqiu in. Looking at the little girl in front of him, the young man seemed slightly overwhelmed. Was she defending me just now? Somehow, a feeling of warmth filled his heart, softening his gaze. Nanqiu picked up a piece of blanket and threw it on the floor. She pursed her lips and said, "You will sleep on the floor. This is for you. Do not cause trouble while I am asleep. Otherwise, you will need to get out of here." The young man smiled faintly. All right. As long as he could stay with her, he was already satisfied. He had been waiting for her for a long time, and waiting for another few days was not a big deal to him. Nanqiu was still a little furious as she thought of how she had been cheated by a wolf these last days. But, seeing that this wolf was quite charming after turning into a human, she would forgive him a little. However, if he wanted her to forgive him completely, that was impossible. Imperial Palace. The Empress was sitting in the pavilion of the Imperial Garden with 2 palace servants fanning her. There was a faint smile on her face. Empress, young lady of the Lu family is here. A servant came forward and reported. Hearing the servant's voice, the Empress turned and saw a girl with a delicate figure approaching her from afar. The girl looked frail and pitiful. However, her gaze did not lack dignity as a young lady of a noble family. Me for extra chapters. The girl's aura was a few times more dignified than that wild girl in the prince's manor. Qing, the Empress smiled and greeted her. She raised her hand and indicated Lu Qingqing to take a seat next to her. Lu Qingqing was a bit flattered. She bowed, sat down, and said gently, "Empress, you summoned me. Is there something you want?" "I just want to ask how you and Qinger are doing. Qinger's temper isn't too good. I hope you don't take his words seriously." Hearing these words, Lu Qingqing's face stiffened. She lowered her head and kept silent. Seeing that expression on her face, the Empress knew that she was bullied in the prince's manor. She smiled and patted Lu Qingqing's hand. "Qingqing, tell me, did the girl in Qinger's manor bully you?" Lu Qingqing was slightly shocked and shook her head. "It has nothing to do with that girl. It was all my fault. I didn't know there was a cat in the prince's manor. Everyone knows that the prince is not feeling well, and he never keeps these spirit beasts in his manor. My servant saw that cat before and she wanted to throw it away because she was afraid it might harm me." She lowered her head and her voice. "I didn't mean to do so." The girl seemed to be very angry. Fourth Prince was also outraged, so he asked me to leave first. "Empress, have I done something wrong? Does Fourth Prince not like me anymore?" She had liked Murong-Qing for a long time, so much that her dream was to marry him. Therefore, when she saw Murong-Qing treating another girl so well, she was jealous and even a little envious. That kind of tenderness was something she had never gotten. A cold light flashed in the Empress' eyes as she gently patted Lu Qingqing's arm and smiled. "You do not need to worry. You will be his concubine, and I will look after you." Lu Qingqing looked up, a sense of comfort flashed in her eyes, but it then turned dull again. "Fourth Prince does not like me. It is a matter of marriage," the Empress said smilingly. "He has to take you as his concubine. But I will help you with this matter, so don't worry." She could deal with Murong-Qing through Lu Qingqing. Therefore, how could she let a wild girl cause trouble in the manor and ruin her plan? Lu Qingqing lowered her gaze. She clenched her fists tightly, somewhat unhappy as she thought that she still needed to rely on the Empress to marry Fourth Prince. However, she had no other choices. Without the Empress' help, perhaps fourth prince would not even look at her anymore. Empress, but that girl, she pursed her lips. The prince can't let her go. If one day she becomes his concubine too, wouldn't she? Concubine? The Empress sneered. She doesn't have that qualification. She was afraid that that girl would bewitch Murongqing if they let her stay in the manor. Then, it would be difficult for Lu Qingqing to get close to him, not to mention to harm him. Therefore, she would never let that woman stay. Qingqing, the emperor and I will handle this matter. Don't worry. I'll assign you to stay in the manor. Lu Qingqing's heart skipped a beat. Though her heart rejoiced, she was a bit hesitant. But I have not yet become his concubine. What others might say. Who in the world will dare to question my decision? Moreover, I've promised you, and I'll pick a date for you to get married. The Empress smiled arrogantly. Lu Qingqing got up, half kneeling on the ground, and respectfully said, I'll obey your order. Marrying him was her lifelong dream. She did not care if someone would say something terrible behind her. As long as she could become his wife, it would be enough. Sister Gu, send the guest away. The Empress got up and said calmly, Go back and get ready. I will send someone to assist you tomorrow. Me for extra chapters. Yes, Empress. Lu Qingqing stood up from the floor and smiled as she answered. Sister Gu bowed and led Lu Qingqing the way out. When they walked out of the imperial garden, Sister Gu suddenly stopped and seemed like she wanted to say something but hesitated. Lu Qingqing confusedly turned to look at Sister Gu. Sister Gu, what's wrong? Young Lady Lu, there is something that I do not know if I can tell you. Sister, please tell me. Facing Sister Gu, Lu Qingqing's tone was gracious. She was the Empress maid, and no one dared to offend her. I think the prince will not agree to marry you even if it were the Emperor's order. I am afraid that if young Lady Lu still gets married to him, he will not touch you and will divorce you later. Hearing Sister Gu's words, Lu Qingqing's face suddenly reddened. Sister Gu, I am just telling you the truth. This is too much for such an outstanding woman like you to bear. Sister Gu sighed and smiled bitterly. Lu Qingqing bit her lip and fell silent. The Empress could force the prince to marry her, but could she force him to be with her? However, a cold light flashed in Sister Gu's eyes. I have something that can help young lady, depending on whether you are willing to accept it or not. Lu Qingqing's gloomy face suddenly brightened after hearing those words. Sister Gu, I wonder what you are talking about. Young Lady Lu, Sister Gu cautiously placed a packet of medicine in Lu Qingqing's hand. This medicine is a strong one. Take it. Bring it to Fourth Prince Manor and give it to Fourth Prince. Then, needless to say, you will be able to achieve what you want. Lu Qingqing immediately understood what Sister Gus meant. She trembled, biting her lip. Her eyes were full of hesitation. However, in the end she still reached out and took medicine handed by Sister Gu. She had liked Fourth Prince for so long, how could she give up just like that? Therefore, she closed her eyes slowly, and after half a second, she opened them with a resolute gaze. Sister Gu, I know exactly what to do. Will this medicine be harmful to his body? Don't worry, young Lady Lu. It's not harmful in any way. Are you still having doubts about me? Sister Gu smiled faintly. I know young Lady Lu is a nice girl, and am afraid others might bully you there. Lu Qingqing pursed her lips. She lowered her gaze and fell silent. But, Sister Gu paused. Young lady, this matter must not be known by the Empress. The Empress is a decent person. If she knows, she would not allow you to do such a thing. I only do so because I feel sorry for you. Lu Qingqing's heart wavered, and she nodded slightly. I understand, Sister Gu. It's getting late. You should go back first. Sister Gu smiled and continued, Go back and wait for the good news. Tomorrow, you will be going to Fourth Prince Manor. By then, the entire manor will be yours. Lu Qingqing was a bit stunned, but she did not speak more. She took a glance at Sister Gu and turned to leave. Her legs were somewhat quivering, and her delicate body appeared to be a little weak under the clear breeze. After Lu Qingqing left, the smile on Sister Gu's face also faded away. She turned around and walked back to the palace. From a distance, she saw the Empress sitting on the soft couch. She hurriedly went to her and greeted her respectfully. "Empress, did you give her the medicine?" The Empress picked up a grape and devoured it while asking expressionlessly. Sister Gu said, "Yes, it's already in young Lady Liu's hands." "Well, did you tell her that I gave it to you, me for extra chapters?" "Empress, I told her that this matter must not be known by you. She does not know that it was you who gave the medicine to me." Sister Gu smiled as she reported. The Empress' face relaxed at that moment. She had asked the state preceptor to falsify the news that Flower King could cure the disease, just to lure Murong-Qing to the Wolf King. Unexpectedly, the Wolf King did not eat him but instead followed him back to his manor. Now that Flower King was still in the palace, the state preceptor was anxious and uneasy. Even though he could still make up the reason that Flower King had not bloomed yet due to some delay, once Flower King bloomed, his lie would definitely be exposed. In that case, she would certainly be dragged down as well. Therefore, she had to kill Murong-Qing before that happened. If he died, Flower King would naturally be useless. Lu Qingqing, this woman is foolish. It's such a waste if we don't use her to destroy Murong-Qing, the Empress sneered. Sister Gu hesitated for a moment before asking, "Empress, you said before that Princess Feng Ruqing from Lu Yun Kingdom will be coming here and might want to take young Lady Lu as her disciple. Since we have asked Lu Qingqing to do this, what will happen to her later?" Lu Qingqing was not witty and looked frail, but she was an excellent girl, and all people here adored her. I intentionally said this to the Emperor. Back then, I know that the Emperor was satisfied with Lu Qingqing, but he had also picked some other women. If we get the other girls to go into Fourth Prince's manor, we may not have one as obedient as Lu Qingqing. The Empress paused and continued, "Secondly, even if it is true, it doesn't matter. I believe that you will not expose this matter. After all, you and your family are in my hands." She played with her fingers and smiled coldly. This meant that if her plan had been exposed, Sister Gu would be the one who would be the scapegoat. However, as the Empress' servant, there was nothing she could do. Sister Gu lowered her pale face. She had followed the Empress from the beginning, and now she could no longer escape. Moreover, we can use that wild girl from the prince's manor. The Empress narrowed her eyes and sneered. "Don't worry. As long as Murong-Qing dies, no one else can harm me." Sister Gu lowered her head and did not speak. She froze, and her body was slightly trembling. The next day, loud noises awakened Nanqiu. She rubbed her eyes impatiently and frowned. "Who is making such a ruckus outside? So noisy." A young man lay on the ground, and after hearing Nanqiu's words, a hint of coldness flashed across his handsome face. "I'll go out and take a look." "No, I'll go with you." Nanqiu's face darkened, seemingly very upset. Ah Bao looked up, bewildered as it stared at Nanqiu in a daze. People with wake-up calls are not good to mess with, especially women like me for extra chapters. Nanqiu opened the door and followed the sound to the front yard. From a distance, she heard Murong-Qing's angry voice, a voice that made Nanqiu freeze. Ever since she met Murong-Qing, he had always been gentle and good-tempered, never saying a word out loud. It was the first time she saw him in this state. She did not know who had angered him. If a patient were angry, it would only be detrimental to his recovery. She also wanted to leave this place earlier, yet she had to fulfill her promise. So, after seeing Murong-Qing so mad, her little face sank again. In the front yard, Lu Qingqing was somewhat speechless. Her small face was pale due to panic. It seemed that she was also frightened by how furious Murong-Qing was. She bit her lip as aggrieved tears swirled in her eyes and almost fell. "Who permitted you to bring her into my manor? And with these clothes? What exactly does this mean? Whose orders are these?" Murong-Qing's face darkened as he angrily looked at the group of eunuchs standing in front of him. The eunuch was also frightened, but he still spoke, "We're only following the Empress' order." The Empress said that Fourth Prince is ready to marry young Lady Lu. Both young Lady Lu and Fourth Prince still have to nurture your feelings, so the Empress has asked young Lady Lu stay in Fourth Prince's manor first. Murong-Qing's veins bulged on his forehead, and he clenched his fists angrily, obviously exasperated by the actions of these people. Lu Qingqing, you are not married yet, but you can't wait to get into my manor? How can you be so cheap? Each of Murong Qing's words were like sharp swords, ruthlessly thrust into her heart, making her hurt and bloody. However, she could not leave, so she stood still and dumbfounded. After all, she had liked him for so many years. How could she be willing to give up like that? Lu Qingqing, I told you to leave. Didn't you hear me? Murong Qing looked furious, full of rage. He looked even more flustered as he clenched his fists tighter when he saw Nanqiu walking toward them. Lu Qingqing looked up and saw Nanqiu sitting nearby, watching them. She then slowly turned and saw a young man next to her. The young man's beauty was so mesmerizing that it took her breath away, but she then relaxed and smiled shyly. It looks like Nan Kai's relationship with the young man is not ordinary, but Murong Qing still allows the young man to stay here for her. So who exactly is being cheap? Lu Qingqing raised her head firmly and said, Fourth Prince, it was the Empress who asked me to come here, and I did not dare to disobey her. So I'm sorry if I make you uncomfortable. It was the Empress' order, and even if Murong Qing was angry, it was impossible to throw her out just like that. As long as she could stay, she had a chance to win his heart. When she became his legal wife, the prince would no longer be able to reject her. Murong Qing's veins were bulging on his forehead. He pointed at Lu Qingqing angrily. I told you to get out. Didn't you hear me? Get out of here immediately. You're not welcomed in my manor. Lu Qingqing pursed her lips. Perhaps she was used to being scolded, so she directly commanded the servants to bring her clothes in. Seeing Lu Qingqing's actions, Murong Qing's fists clenched tighter, and the anger in his eyes was monstrous. Me for extra chapters. Fourth Prince, I know you don't like me, but do you dare to go against the Empress? I wouldn't dare. Lu Qingqing bit her lip. The Empress ordered me to come here. If I don't come, I will only drag down the whole Lu family. Please understand me. Murong Qing had not yet recovered. He was so furious this time that he started coughing violently. The coughing made Lu Qingqing panic. She stepped forward and tried to help Murong Qing, but he raised his hand and pushed her away. Lu Qingqing, I don't like you. I would rather not marry my whole life than marry a woman I don't like. You will suffer if you marry me. The thought of spending the rest of his life with someone he did not love was difficult for him. This feeling was not what he wanted. He would rather die alone than marry someone he did not love. Otherwise, what was the meaning of life? Murong Qing turned and gazed at Nanqiu. His eyes softened. Even his pale face had recovered a bit. Nanqiu saw Murong Qing looking at her. She almost choked on the grapes in her mouth. Fortunately, the young man hurriedly patted her back to help her swallow the mouthful of grapes. Why are you looking at me? Nanqiu was baffled. If you don't like her, no one can force you. But if you like her, just marry her. So why are you looking at me like that? She had always felt that marriage was a matter that needed to be decided by herself. If he did not like her, he should reject her. No one could force him. Now that Murong Qing kept looking at her, could it be that he wanted her to help him make a decision? Nanqiu placed her hand on her cheek and seemed to be in deep thought. Father will kick any girl who dares to get close to him away, but mother, she's gentle to girls. Murong Qing is a man. He should be the same as father. He would only keep the girl he likes for life. Nanqiu did not understand Murong Qing's gaze, but the young man standing next to her clearly understood what was on Murong Qing's mind. This guy has a feeling for Xia Xia. He'll never allow him to get what he wants. Xia Xia, it's still early. Let's go back and continue sleeping? The young man smiled stunningly. Nanqiu yawned. Indeed. I have woken up too early in the morning. Let's go back to sleep. After she said this, she stood up from the stool, held the bowl of fruit in her hand, and walked toward her room. Lu Qingqing sneered. Fourth Prince, did you hear that? Does it mean that they are sleeping together? Murong Qing's heart fiercely seized, and he glanced at Lu Qingqing coldly. Shut up. I don't understand. She obviously doesn't like you. And now she's even having an affair with another man. Why do you have to be so bitter? Now that they are sleeping together. Don't you have any dignity? Dignity? Murongqing sneered and looked at Lu Qingqing with contempt in his gaze. What about you moving in here? Dignity? Ridiculous. Lu Qingqing has even ignored her reputation and moved to my manor. Now she's still talking about dignity? Me for extra chapters. And Nan Ming is just a wolf. He can't be with Maiden Xia Xia. Murongqing comforted himself, and it made him feel a lot better. He did not look at Lu Qingqing again. He simply turned his back to her. I hope you can consider leaving the imperial family. I will never marry you in this life. They can force me to let you get into my manor, but they can never force or urge me to bring you to my bridal chamber. If I do not want to touch you, then no one can do anything. If you have to marry me, it will only be a lifetime of widowhood. After saying that, Murongqing walked away. He did not even so much as glance at Lu Qingqing, leaving her standing alone in the courtyard. Lu Qingqing stared at Murongqing's back as he left. Her fists clenched tightly, and her breathing grew heavy with pain. She had come this far, and there was no turning back. She had to continue moving forward. There was no room for her to turn back. She slowly opened her hand and stared at a packet of medicine powder. Lu Qingqing seemed to grow more determined. In these 2 days, Lu Qingqing kept trying to find ways to approach Murongqing, but Murongqing refused to see her, shutting himself in the study room and never wanting to come out. If she could not get close to Murongqing, she could not give him the medicine. Then there was no way to get him completely. In contrast to the anxious Lu Qingqing, it had been boring to Nan Qiyu these past 2 days. With her hand placed on her cheek, she sat on a tree while looking down at the young man who was standing under the tree and asked, "Ah Ming, has the flower bloomed yet? It's too boring here. I can't wait any longer. I want to leave." Then, should we leave tomorrow? The young man looked up and smiled. He smiled brightly, and his beauty could steal people's hearts. However, this young man only smiled in front of Nan Qiyu. Other times, he would always put on a cold expression, ignoring everyone around him. Nan Qiyu pouted. "But I've promised to stay. What if I ask Abao to stay here? Abao can go back after the prince has recovered, and if he cannot recover, I will ask my mother to help him." She would stay, but not because she was worried about Murongqing. Murongqing had helped her. No matter what, she must help him back. She just doubted whether Flower King would really work. If she were still here when Murongqing failed to recover, at least there was still a way for her to help him, thus returning the favor to him. However, the days in Changqing Kingdom were just too dull, and she could not wait any longer. "All right, let Abao stay, and we'll leave first." The young man smirked as he looked at Abao lying under the sun not far away. Abao seemed to have sensed that something was up and slowly raised its head. It looked at Nan Ming doubtfully with its onyx-like eyes. Why do I feel that this wolf is scheming against me again? Nan Ming's gaze made it tremble a little. However, soon the young man turned and looked at Nan Qiyu. The light in his eyes was so gentle. "Then, should we pack up and leave tonight?" Nan Qiyu was slightly stunned and shook her head. "It's getting late. Let's do it tomorrow. Besides, Abao has already told my mother about my whereabouts, and I don't know whether she will come to pick me up or not. If she came, it would prove that her father had forgiven her." "All right," the young man smiled faintly. "Me for extra chapters." Not far away, Lu Qingqing looked at the young girl coldly. She did not understand why the prince would not let the girl go when she already had another man by her side. Even more, he had lowered his dignity to snatch a woman from another man and actually allowed that man to stay in his manor for her? Ridiculous. Perhaps the Empress and the Emperor still do not know about this. Lu Qingqing took a final look at the 2 people in front of her and turned to leave. The most important thing she had to do now was to become his concubine first. After that, the prince would no longer think about that wild woman. When she got to her room, Lu Qingqing took medicine out of her hand and carefully sprinkled it into the soup on the table. She picked up the soup and walked toward the door. Instead of going directly to the study room, she pulled a servant and asked with a smile, "Could you please help me to send this soup to 4th Prince?" In the past 2 days, Lu Qingqing did not do anything. But she had taken care of all the manor. The Empress sent her, so everyone here had to respect her. The servant looked at the soup that Lu Qingqing handed to her and was a bit confused. "Why don't you send it to the prince yourself, miss?" Lu Qingqing said with a bitter smile. "He doesn't like to see me. If he knew that it was I who made the soup, he would not even want to taste it. I have broiled this soup for hours, and I don't want to waste it." She rubbed her fingers gently and hid them behind her back again. The servant took a look at her, and only then did she notice that Lu Qingqing's hands were burned. The servant's heart ached. Why would the prince be so kind to a woman who didn't like him and let go of a nice girl like young Lady Lu? Young Lady is a good woman. No man would refuse a nice girl like her. Unfortunately, she has fallen in love with fourth prince. Young Lady Lu, don't worry. I will definitely send this soup to fourth prince. Lu Qingqing smiled brightly. Please, but don't let fourth prince know that I sent it. Otherwise, I'm afraid that he may not drink this soup. I understand. The servant bowed to Lu Qingqing and retreated. The smile on Lu Qingqing's face gradually disappeared. She lightly pursed her lips and gazed at the departing servant. This matter had come to this point. There was no turning back. She took one last look in the direction of the servant, turned around, walked toward the courtyard, and gradually disappeared under the sunlight. Murong Qing sat in the study room, rubbing his temples. A book was placed in front of him, and he was reading it very seriously. The study room door was pushed open, and the servant came in with a bowl of soup. Murong Qing said without raising his head, "Just put it here." Upon hearing this, the servant put the soup down and turned around to leave. After she left, the study room was quiet again. Murong Qing was in a bad mood these days because of Lu Qingqing and had even shut himself in the study room, not taking even a single step out of his room. He was a little thirsty from reading the book and suddenly thought about the soup on the table. The soup was still a little warm. He poured himself a small portion and sipped it gently. The soup today tasted a little strange, but he could not seem to quite put a finger on what was off. It was also not quite the same as usual. He thought the people working in the kitchen might have used a new recipe perhaps. Murong Qing did not think much about it. He drank all of the soup. Me for extra chapters. When the soup entered his belly, Murong Qing felt his heart was a bit hot and it felt as if something was stinging his heart, a feeling that made him no longer able to focus on reading. He clenched his hand tightly around his chest. It was so painful, making it difficult even to breathe. Suddenly, he spurted a mouthful of blood to the ground. "It hurts." Murong Qing became so weak and gradually fell to the ground. His breathing grew heavy, his throat was hurt, and his vision became blurry. At that moment, a delicate and beautiful small face emerged in his mind. "If I die today, he'll never have the chance to see Maiden Xia Xia again." And he could no longer see the smile that brightened his life. He had driven everyone out of the study room and did not allow anyone to enter. Now, he choked when he wanted to open his mouth to shout for help. He grabbed his chest tightly and wanted to call for help, but he failed to do so. He then turned and saw the bowl of soup on the table. Murong Qing trembled and reached out his hand, took the soup bowl, and smashed it to the ground hard. Murong Qing did not allow anyone to come in and disturb him, but there were still guards outside the study room. The sound of the shattered bowl caught the attention of the guards outside. The guards rushed in and saw Murong Qing collapsing to the ground. All of them were shocked and panicking. "Go and inform the emperor that fourth prince is dying." The entire study room was in chaos. Some people rushed to the palace to report, and some people went to see Murong Qing. Murong Qing gradually closed his eyes and lay on the cold ground, not far from the study room. Lu Qingqing anxiously walked back and forth, feeling a little uneasy. Her heart beat faster as if something was about to happen. Will fourth prince drink the soup? Will he find out that I made the soup for him? Just as Lu Qingqing was getting very anxious, a voice outside that was even more anxious than she felt came, bringing earth-shattering news. "Fourth prince is in trouble. He has been poisoned." "He's dying what?" Lu Qingqing panicked, her legs went weak, and she almost fell to the ground. "What do you mean fourth prince has been poisoned?" If someone discovered that she had given the soup to fourth prince, she would be doomed. Fourth prince was poisoned and needed an antidote. However, Why did everyone say he was dying? Lu Qingqing held on to a tree to stabilize her body. She did not have time to think about it and hurriedly ran toward the prince's room. She saw many servants and guards outside the room from a distance, and all of them looked panicked. The sense of fear came up her chest again, causing her body to tremble a little. She stumbled forward and raised her hand to push open the door. She then saw Murongqing lying on the bed with a pale face. An elder sat next to Murongqing, and he was the physician of Fourth Prince's manor, who had rushed over after hearing the news that the prince was unconscious. He frowned and his face was a bit pale. A moment later, he stood up and closed his eyes in grief and only opened them after a long time. Go and tell the emperor and the empress that the prince has been poisoned and is dying. Me for extra chapters. Poisoned? Lu Qingqing almost collapsed to the ground, her gaze sad and painful as she looked at the silent young man on the bed. She felt like a sword stabbed her heart fiercely, painful and regretful. Sister Gu said the medicine would not harm him. Has it poisoned him? Impossible. I don't believe it. The emperor and the empress hurried over. They went into the room and saw the unconscious Murongqing. They suddenly became furious. What is going on with Qing'er? The elder knelt on the ground. Emperor, please forgive me. The prince is poisoned. I can't help him. Poisoned? This word made the emperor almost collapse to the ground. Fortunately, the empress held him up in time. He stood up straight, his forehead veins jumped, and his face was full of anger. Investigate who has poisoned Qing'er. After hearing these words, Lu Qingqing's face grew paler. She trembled and panicked. If the emperor found out that Murongqing became this way after he drank her soup, no, it has nothing to do with me. That medicine was from Sister Gu. I just want to be his woman. The empress looked at Lu Qingqing and frowned. Lu Qingqing was good at everything but not at pretending. Fortunately, the emperor was too busy with Qing'er now and did not notice her expression. Otherwise, she might have been suspected of her actions. At times like this, she should pretend to be as if nothing was wrong so that she would not be suspected as the one who poisoned the prince. Emperor, the empress' eyes were filled with grief. The people in Fourth Prince Manor all are your men. Who would poison Qing'er? All are my men. These few words made the emperor realize something. That's right. There's a stranger in my son's manor. No one knew where that girl came from. Maybe she's a spy from an enemy kingdom, deliberately relying on her beauty to get close to Qing'er. Guard, arrest that woman for me. If she has poisoned him, I will not spare even one of her family. Murongqing was his son. He would never allow anyone to hurt him even a bit. Lu Qingqing was confused. She did not understand why this matter would involve that woman. But she lowered her gaze and gritted her teeth. She had never lied before and not even had an intention of poisoning others. However, this time, she had no choice. If the emperor knew it was because of her, even if she did not poison him, the emperor still would not let the Lu family go. For the Lu family's sake, there were many things that she had no choice but to keep silent. Emperor. Lu Qingqing's eyes were filled with tears as she raised her eyes to look at the emperor. It was my fault. The emperor turned to Lu Qingqing and frowned. What do you mean by that? Me for extra chapters. In his eyes, there was still a wave of unresolved anger. Lu Qingqing's face was full of misery. Fourth Prince's meals are all prepared by the people in Fourth Prince's manor, but today, I prepared soup for him, and all the servants in the manor knew about this. Fourth Prince refused to see me, so I got the servants to give it to him instead. This matter, sooner or later, could not be hidden unless they killed the servants who saw her prepare the soup. However, from childhood until now, she could not even trample an ant to death. So how could she try to kill someone? Therefore, she could only tell the story herself first. The emperor was even more furious. You mean you poisoned Qing'er? I love him. How could I do that? Lu Qingqing's voice was tinged with tears. But Maiden Xia Xia came to my room today. When I came back to get the soup, I bumped into her. At first, I did not care. I thought if she wanted to harm someone, at most, it would be me. I did not even think that she would want to make a move on Fourth Prince. The emperor became even more furious hearing that, and he clenched his fists tightly, making them crack. The anger in his eyes was as if it could burn the world down. In any case, I caused this. If I had paid more attention, this would not have happened. Emperor, if fourth prince really doesn't wake up this time, I'm willing to go with him. Even if we are not yet married, in my mind, he is already my husband in this life. I certainly will not have second thoughts. She passionately kowtowed several times. She looked very determined. The empress then secretly looked at Lu Qingqing appreciatively. When she looked back at the emperor, the light in his eyes dispersed, replaced by that full of grief. Emperor, this matter has nothing to do with Lu Qingqing. She has also been framed by someone. Moreover, Lu Qingqing is such a good girl. I believe that this time, Qing'er can clearly see some people's true nature and understand who is truly for him. If you punish Lu Qingqing, I'm afraid that Qing'er won't forgive you when he wakes up. The emperor's face darkened. In this matter, Lu Qingqing was indeed responsible for believing that others have a harmless heart, and yet the culprit was the woman who had once seduced Qing'er. I can distinguish who is right and who is wrong clearly. That woman dares to treat Qing'er like this. I will not forgive her. Inside the room, Nanqiu lazily stretched her back. She rubbed her sleepy eyes, looked at the young man lying on the beam in confusion, and asked, "What time is it? Why is it so noisy outside?" Nanming frowned. His handsome and stunning features were radiant. As he was looking at Nanqiu, his eyes carried a gentle light. It was something that would never be there in normal times. Just at this moment, the door of the room was suddenly kicked open by someone. The light in Nanming's eyes disappeared. His pair of beautiful eyes turned cold. Nankai's small face sank. She had never been at peace since she came to Chongqing Kingdom. "Take them away," the guard, as the head of the group, said coldly. Nanming jumped down from the beam. He looked at the group of people coldly. Murderous intent spread out from the bottom of his heart. However, Nanqiu was quite calm. She walked down from the bed, slowly walked toward the group of guards, and asked expressionlessly, "What do you want?" "Humph," the guards coldly snorted. "You are suspected of plotting against our fourth prince. I am here by order of the emperor." "Fourth prince?" Nanqiu was faintly shocked, apparently frozen by the guard's words. "Something happened to Murongqing?" She took a deep breath and said, "Ah Ming, let's go and see what's happened." Perhaps because of Nankai's words, the murderous aura that filled his body gradually disappeared. Ah Bao leaped up from the ground and jumped into Nankai's arms. Its cat eyes slightly narrowed, a hint of coldness flashed in them. The people of Chongqing Kingdom are really daring to make a move on little princess. They're asking for death. After all, Murongqing had helped Nanqiu. Nanqiu did not want him to die, so she intended to see him. Me for extra chapters. However, the emperor's order was for them to tie Nanqiu up, so how could the guards just allow her to walk past them, untied? However, then just as they were about to make a move, a powerful force came crashing down, sending all the guards who were trying to get close to Nanqiu flying away. Nanming walked slowly to Nankai's side, smiling and holding her hand. He smiled, and there was a gentle light in his eyes once again. "Let's go." The young man's hand was warm, so warm that Nanqiu's heart trembled. She wanted to take her hand back, but the young man's grip was so tight that even when she used force, she still could not pull her hand back and could only let him hold her hand toward the door, while in the bedroom. The atmosphere was enveloped by grief and pain. The emperor's worried gaze was fixed upon Murongqing on the bed. The imperial doctors were all kneeling on the floor. Their faces were pale. Looking at Murongqing, the grief on the emperor's face intensified until, after the two hand-in-hand figures entered, all his grief turned into anger. This damn girl is the woman Qing'er want to marry? Now, she has brought another man into the manor and dares to poison Qing'er. Is such a woman like she worthy of him? The emperor and the empress also could not understand why Murongqing rejected such a good girl as Lu Qingqing and fell in love with this wild girl instead. She did not seem to have any other merits besides her good looks. After walking in, Nanqiu stopped, and she frowned. Her gaze fell upon Murong Qing on the bed while her fingers lightly stroked her chin. Ah Ming, he is so pitiful. His illness is not yet cured, and he is poisoned again. Nan Ming looked at Nan Qiu with a smile in his eyes. Well, it's quite miserable. Hearing Nan Kai's words, the emperor was even more furious. This culprit, now she still dared to gloat here. How dare you, he shouted angrily with a ruthlessness in his eyes. Little girl, just now, Lu Qingqing said that you took advantage of her absence and secretly poisoned Qing. What exactly is your purpose for doing so? Nan Qiu was slightly surprised. She tilted her head to look at Lu Qingqing and blinked slightly. She initially thought that Lu Qingqing was just too fond of Murong Qing, but she did not expect Lu Qingqing to lie to this extent. Answer me immediately. The emperor's eyes were full of fury. Otherwise, you will definitely be executed. Executed? Nan Qiu turned to the emperor, and suddenly she smiled. That smile was brilliant, like sunshine. It was hard to ignore her beauty. The emperor had to admit that this little girl was indeed good-looking. Especially for naive men, he was easily compelled by her smile. This was why Murong Qing could be so crazy for her. You want to execute me? She pointed to her nose and asked again. Or what? This time it was the empress who opened her mouth first. She smiled coldly. Little girl, I admire your courage. You dared to break into Fourth Prince's manor and poisoned him, but you are still weak. You did it secretly, but there is always someone who can detect it. If you tell your purpose, I might still consider keeping your dead body completely. The empress lifted her chin. Her tone was condescending and overbearing. The coldness in Nan Ming's eyes flashed demonically. In his eyes, there was already a wave of unsuppressed anger. However, Nan Qiu gave Nan Ming's hand a pump. Me for extra chapters. The young girl's warm hand gradually calmed the young man's manic heart, and he stood aside obediently. Although my father has always disliked me since childhood, he has never dared to touch even a single finger of mine. So what are you guys thinking? You want to execute me? Nan Qiu raised her pretty little face, which slightly sunken. The emperor was furious and waved his hand fiercely. Guard, seize her. With that order, the guards once again headed toward Nan Qiu. The murderous intent in Nan Ming's eyes became even more intense, and he glanced at the guards surrounding them coldly. These guards were all stunned, and they could not help but stop. His eyes were so fierce, which made the guards tremble. This feeling made them no longer dare to take a step closer. There were panic and dismay in their eyes. Why are you guys still standing there? Hurry up. As soon as he thought of Murong Qing's possible death, he wanted to deal with this girl first to avenge Murong Qing. But Nan Qiu glanced at the people present coldly. The aura surrounding her body was so powerful that it made people somewhat scared of her. Initially, I had wanted to come and save Murong Qing, but looking at this, it seems that you guys don't need me to save him. Ah Ming, let's go home. Initially, she wanted to leave tomorrow. But now, she did not want to stay even for an hour. Xia, the unconscious person on the bed, seemed to have sensed something. He murmured but could only make a weak sound, still with his eyes tightly closed. Murong Qing's voice made Nan Qiu stop for a while, but eventually, she walked toward the door. Xia, don't go. Murong Qing's voice carried hope, but there was no way to make Nan Qiu stay any longer. Ah Bao, Nan Qiu lowered her gaze and said, kill whoever tries to stop me. Ah Bao lifted its gaze. Its eyes slightly narrowed as it looked at the people around it warningly. The group of guards ignored the cat. What made them scared was the young man who was following Nan Qiu. This young man looked very strong and was not such an easy person to deal with. The good thing was that Nan Ming did not have the desire to continue making a move. He was afraid that if he attacked them now, it would not be as simple as before. It would undoubtedly make the flesh of these people directly explode. So bloody that it would easily scare Xia. Therefore, he decided to let go and let Abao take care of it. Why are you guys still standing there? The emperor was furious. If you don't do it, you are considered disobeying my orders and will be executed. This sentence made the group of guards no longer dare to retreat, so they rushed toward Nanqiu. Nanqiu pursed her lips and did not say much. She turned her back on the group behind her, her dress fluttering. At the same time, A Bao also raised its head. A red light flashed in its eyes. It leaped up, scratching the guard's neck with its sharp claws. Blood splashed out, and the guards fell to the ground silently. Nanqiu looked back at the emperor expressionlessly. I came here and wanted to wait for Murongqing's condition to get better before leaving. After all, he once helped me back then. My mother taught me to be grateful, but since you do not want me to stay, I'll leave. As for Murongqing. She paused and smiled coldly. You should really look into it. How was he poisoned? Me for extra chapters. The emperor was stunned. Did the girl mean that she did not poison Murongqing? However, the witnesses were all there. Lu Qingqing saw it with her eyes. Was it false? The actual person who gave the poison to Murongqing had no reason to shelter her. So, besides this girl, he could not think of anyone else who would do so. Murongqing treated people with kindness and modesty. He did not make enemies with people, so there was no reason for anyone to harm him. You don't have to demonize people here, the emperor sneered. No matter what you say today, you must pay for Qing'er's life. If he manages to live, I might not pass your death sentence. But if he dies, you must pay for his life. Nanqiu pursed her lips and said no more, turning her back to the emperor. I would like to see if you can stop us. The imperial city of Chongqing Kingdom. Outside of the city gate, Feng Ruqing and Nan Xian stopped in their tracks. They stared at the city gate and slowly stepped inside. The people in Chongqing Kingdom were quite familiar with these two figures. One was extremely beautiful in a red dress, while the other one was as handsome as jade, like an immortal with a cold face. Therefore, when Feng Ruqing and Nan Xian stepped into the city gate, the people sent by the emperor of Chongqing Kingdom had already recognized the two of them. Their eyes lit up, and they rushed to greet them. Excuse me, are the two of you Princess Feng Ruqing and State Preceptor Nan Xian of Luyun Kingdom? Feng Ruqing frowned. She looked at the guard in front of her and nodded. The guard was happy, and he was even more respectful. The emperor heard that the two of you were coming and has ordered me to welcome you. Is anything that you need me to help you with? It was the first time he met Feng Ruqing and Nan Xian. The thought that these two people's fame was known on the mainland made him tremble a little from excitement. Oh, Feng Ruqing was a bit heedless. I would like to go to Fourth Prince's manor. Do you know where it is? The guard was shocked for a moment. Feng Ruqing came here to find the fourth prince? He could not help but look even more delighted. Princess Ruqing, State Preceptor Nan Xian, please follow me. Feng Ruqing was glad that someone could lead the way, so she did not have to bother finding it by herself. Therefore, she followed him with Nan Xian and headed toward Fourth Prince Manor. Fourth Prince Manor. A group of guards had fallen in a pool of blood. A Bao elegantly licked the blood on its paws and looked at these people disdainfully. The mockery in its eyes was intense. The emperor's face darkened. His gaze was filled with rage. How dare you? Not only did you poison Qing'e, but you even dare to disobey my orders. In this Chongqing Kingdom, no one had ever dared to be so reckless with him. Nanqiu suddenly seemed to think of something. She stopped for a while and turned to Lu Qingqing behind her. Lu Qingqing's body quivered slightly. She stood up from the ground and took a few steps back, panicked. Her body trembled, and her gaze was full of fear. She was terrified. She did not expect this cat to be so strong. She suddenly thought about when she first came to Fourth Prince Manor, and her servant had wanted to throw this cat out. That gave her goosebumps as she froze. Unbridled. The emperor was furious, and his gaze was stern as he looked at Nanqiu. Me for extra chapters. Nanqiu looked at Lu Qingqing smilingly. However, her eyes were cold. I don't know why you want to trap me, and I will never forgive anyone who tried to trap me. Lu Qingqing's face turned pale, her lips trembled. The panic in her eyes increased, and her heart palpitated even more. But, Nanqiu crooked her small head, smiling, I also admire the people of Chongqing Kingdom. A group of blind who try every possible way to marry you to Murongqing. Although I do not like Murongqing romantically, At the very least, I still considered him my friend. So, I sympathize with him, being so victimized by you, yet others still want to let you marry him. Lu Qingqing's lips turned pale. Nan Qiyu was still young, but she had always made her feel a little uncomfortable. She felt like she wanted to turn around and escape from Nan Qiyu immediately. However, she was unable to move. It was as if her feet were rooted in the ground. Her legs were trembling, but she could not even take a step back. Little girl. The emperor was furious, and he sneered, "Young Lady Lu is not as simple as you think. She is my approved daughter-in-law. Of course, you'll choose to believe her, and she has another identity. They said that Feng Ruqing of Lu Yun Kingdom would come soon. Empress is right. She has gone to many places to gather female disciples. Considering she will come here, it must be for the same reason. Lu Qingqing is the most excellent girl in Changqing Kingdom, and she is even famous in other kingdoms. Besides her, he could not think of anyone else who had such talent." Bang! Nan Qiyu lifted her leg and kicked Lu Qingqing away. The crowd was stunned. The kick caused Lu Qingqing's abdomen to rise in pain. The emperor's face darkened. "This girl does not even respect me as the emperor of this kingdom." What was even more shocking for him was that her kick was too harsh and rough. Lu Qingqing was quite strong, but she seemed to have no room for resistance under Nan Kai's kick. Of course, it was also possible that she was caught off guard, making Lu Qingqing momentarily did not expect her to do that. "I've never hit anyone before, and you're the first." Nan Qiyu tilted her chin, looking somewhat arrogant. Nan Ming's gaze was always fixed upon Nan Qiyu. He smiled proudly as he saw such an arrogant expression on the little girl's face. "Nan Ming, let's go." She did not like killing people or seeing blood. However, Lu Qingqing had just framed her, and she would not let her go easily. Yet, she did not like to do the dirty work herself. Just like these guards who wanted to stop her, she would still instruct Ah Bao to settle them. It was just that. She did not like to let her hands be stained with blood. It made her feel too dirty as it could not be washed clean and would remain on her hands for life. The smell of blood even made her a little uncomfortable. "Emperor! Emperor!" Suddenly, a voice filled with excitement came. "Princess Feng Ruqing of Lu Yun Kingdom and State Preceptor Nan Xian are here." That sentence not only made the people in the room excited, but even Nan Kai's expression also froze. She hurriedly rushed out and took a glance at the familiar figure in a red dress. At that moment, Nan Kai's eyes welled up with tears. She froze, and her beautiful little face was also covered in tears. "She has finally come to bring me home. Father has forgiven me for extra chapters. I can go home now." Her tears were like long rivers, pouring down her face. She wiped them hard but somehow could not stop crying. The emperor was happier. The person with the most powerful ability whom he knew very well had come. "I heard that she could revive people from the dead. Fortunately, she's here. Does it mean that Qing'er can be saved?" The crowd walked out slowly with Nan Qiyu. The empress had seen this famous woman countless times in portraits, but now was the first time she saw her in person. She found that this woman was more beautiful than the portraits. The man next to her had a gentle face, but all his gentleness was reserved only for one woman. A faint smile played upon his handsome and immortal-like face. That smile disappeared when he saw Nan Qiyu, which turned his face dark. The empress noticed the changes on his face. By looking at State Preceptor Nan Xian's expression, he seems to hate this little girl? It looks like Hod is helping me. This little girl has dared to disobey me back then. This time, the person who will destroy this little girl has finally appeared. However, before the empress could speak, Nan Xian moved so quickly and stood before Nan Qiyu. His handsome and cold face was now filled with rage. Who did this? His gaze was cold, and there seemed to be a shocking storm in his eyes that could make people tremble in fear. "I will ask again. The blood on your body, who did this?" With every word he said, the temperature around him fell by a degree. It was so frightening that no one present dared to speak. The Empress looked at Nan Qiu and Nan Ming with a horrified gaze. At that moment, they finally felt that something was wrong. However, it was difficult to put a finger on just what it was. Lu Qingqing bit her lip hard. Her face was pale, and her body trembled hard. The feeling of uneasiness was growing stronger, almost devouring her. Bao. The person who said this was Feng Ruqing. She had a cold and sullen expression as she slowly stepped in. Is this what you, the frontier, are capable of? Bao's body inexplicably shivered. Its gaze was blank as if it did not know what it had done wrong. Princess and State Preceptor are angry. That, Bao trembled. I've protected her well. Its little princess ate well and slept well. Except for the Wolf King's extra companionship, nothing had changed since being in Princess Manor. Feng Ruqing looked around Nankai's body and did not find any wound. Instead, she saw her body stained with blood. Her face turned cold and sank again. This blood, Nankai's little face was red. It is not mine. It's Bao's blood. When it was fighting just now, the blood had accidentally splashed onto me. Feng Ruqing sighed in relief, smiled, and extended her arms. Nan Qiu was excited and bounced over to her mother. Feng Ruqing smiled and caught the little girl's tiny body in her arms, hugging her tightly. The Empress and others suddenly froze. Their eyes were bigger than the copper tomb, so shocked that their whole faces turned pale with panic in their eyes. What is the relationship between this wild girl and Feng Ruqing? At first, seeing Nan Xian so worried about her, they had also misunderstood that Nan Xian and the little girl might have a relationship. However, all people knew that Princess Feng Ruqing could not tolerate other women, and State Preceptor Nan Xian had always listened to her. So they remained silent, waiting for what would happen to Nan Qiu later. However, this scene made their brains buzz and their minds blank. The Empress froze, and even her breathing grew heavy. Me for extra chapters. She clenched her fists tightly, and her face was full of panic and confusion. Mother, Nan Qiu smiled brightly. I know that Father will forgive me. Now you can take me home. Father? Mother? The Empress, who was still full of panic, instantly turned ashen after hearing this name, and her heart stopped beating. Lu Qingqing shook her head and stepped backward. She could not believe what she was seeing. Feng Ruqing is Xia Xia's mother? But I thought her family name was Xia. Impossible, absolutely impossible. The Emperor's face changed dramatically. He stiffly turned his head, and his gaze fell upon Lu Qingqing. Lu Qingqing had said before. Xia Xia sneaked into the room and poisoned Murong Qing. She said that Xia Xia might be a spy sent by other kingdoms to harm the Chongqing kingdom prince. However, Lu Qingqing was right about one thing. She was indeed from another kingdom. But that was Lu Yun Kingdom. All the kingdoms in Songyu mainland were affiliated with Lu Yun Kingdom. If Lu Yun Kingdom wanted to start a war, it was only a matter of words. Why would they go and poison Fourth Prince? Was it necessary for them to do such a thing? You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.